Welcome back to the Better Men, Better Ball Player podcast. I'm your host, Trey Cobb. I want to thank you for joining us on our 119th episode of the podcast. We get a chance to talk to head coach at Georgetown University, Coach Edwin Thompson. Coach Thompson was recently coming off their first winning season at Georgetown since 1986. His 2002 club was the first Georgetown squad to win their first Big East championship appearance since 2018. The first time that they had the Rookie of the Year, the Freshman of the Year, as well as having the first Big East Staff of the Year. And in 2022, Georgetown broke records for wins, home runs, total bases, and end of the season RPI. Prior to coming to Georgetown, he was at Eastern Kentucky University. At EKU, again, they were a losing program when he got there. Before COVID, they were 12-2, just beat LSU, and then got shut down. But they had consecutive 30-win seasons there, 2 straight conference tournaments. In all 5 years they were there, they had a team GPA of 3.0 or better. Has been a USA Baseball member since 2015. Worked with USA Baseball staff anywhere from the 18U National program as well as the 17U National Development Program, Sergeant Stripes, Tournament of Stars manager, and been involved with USA Baseball in that high honor of representing our country. Assistant coach staff's been part of the staff at Georgia State as well as Duke University, where he's helpful and them having even more success on the offensive side of the game, and got his head coaching start at Bates College. Former head coach at Bates College, where he set school record for wins. They were again last place team, and then made a school record for wins. His first career head coaching job was at University of Maine at Farmington, and where, like he talks about in the podcast, how he made it his dream job where he was, and that was where he was, and he made a great career out of it there. But Coach Thompson's always active in the community. You can follow him, and he's out there. Him and his teams are always very active in the community, local charities, nonprofit organizations, providing just help for those that are less fortunate. We dive into some of those things and how that philosophy and how he does that, and improves the perspective that they have on players and the perspective on the game and what they're doing with all the quote-unquote work that they have and things that they quote-unquote have to do. So just we touch base about that, and it's really fun. And so at the end of the day, like Coach Thompson, you can tell he's just a first-class person, first class dude. Really enjoyed it, and it really spent some quality time and just getting to learn from him, and really appreciate him. Just like I can't thank our sponsors, Netting Pros, as well, for helping us this platform that we have. Netting professionals are improving programs one facility at a time. Netting professionals specialize in design, fabrication, and installation of custom netting for backstops, batting cages, dugouts, scoreboards, BP screens, and ball carts. They also design and install digital wall graphic padding, windscreen, turf protectors, dugout benches, dugout cubbies, and more. Netting Pros continue to provide quality products and services to many recreation, high school, and college fields, facilities, and stadiums throughout the country. Contact them today at 844-620-2707 or info@nettingpros.com. Visit them online at www.nettingpros.com or check out Netting Pros on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn for all their latest products and projects. So, big shout out to those guys. Thanks to Coach Thompson. You guys enjoy it. For all the things from culture to his practice settings, community, how he's able to, his experience with football and basketball, how it really shaped him into kind of the great stuff he does on the baseball field. So, among many things. So, really enjoyed it, and I hope you guys will. So, here he is, Coach Edwin Thompson, Georgetown University.
We provide shoes for kids that are less fortunate. It started when I was at Georgia State. Ron Hunter, the basketball coach, did it. He coached the game barefoot. We started talking about what it is and what the organization is. And, essentially, once I got the head job at EKU, we did it every year until COVID. And so it was kind of like last year was our first year we weren't able to serve the kids. I think we've served over 1,000 plus kids in my time. in a pair of shoes. And the day kind of normally flows where the kids come out. We provide a pair of shoes for them, less fortunate kids that just don't have the means to get an extra pair of shoes. And a lot of times the only pair of shoes they get. But then we play the kids, our kids will play with them like a play day, and then they come back out to a game and things like that. But we're going to kind of transition that to August until they come back to school. This time of year is just difficult in this area. Still kind of with, kind of the COVID stuff. So we just try to transition out to August where we're going to do that. But that's kind of, the transition of being in a city versus being in a rural area where it's a lot easier to access to, like in our town, we could bring the buses out. It was like, It was the teachers could drive the bus. It was just like different situation here. It's like, it's hard to come on MLK Day, but it works. It will still work out. The kids will still get served. So that's what's most important to us. But yeah, and as far as that, we bring our people in.
Do you sit down at the end of the year and plan these things out, or, and specifically, is this something that you've shown, like the more that you've done this, the more that it's kind of related to, and just kind of how it's helped your program?
Yeah, I think each team is different. We have a set format. We do have some ideas for our program. We do Miracle League, but we work with the Nats Youth Academy as well because we're there. That's an important part of giving back to the game in the city of DC. But at the same time, we venture out to areas, things in the area, so that's something that it just kind of comes. And then we don't give it too much structure other than we know we have dates blocked out in the fall. And as things kind of come up, like next year, we're doing the Habitat for Humanity. We're going to do a few different things that we haven't done here. I've done it at other schools. And so I try to give some guys the variety, but just to give them opportunities to serve others. I think has always been the important part. I mean, ultimately, that's the fun part about the job is to be able to, have kids look up to you where they come out to our games, but also just people that are less fortunate to actually recognize how fortunate we are in our program and the players where they're at. So try to have them allow that and have them awareness of their surroundings.
Nice. Is this something that, how'd this come about? Like, was there something that just kind of, how did your mission, or how did your say, look, this is so important that we're going to do this, and I've done this every step of the way from now on?
Every step. Even my first year, we did Toys for Tots when I was at University of Maine at Farmington. We had a big draw in Maine in a small rural area, and kids needed something basic, and we worked with a local chapter there, and that kind of how it started, to be honest. And every year we did that. It was like each school I've had one that we kind of did was like our staple. And that was one there. And when we were at Bates College, we did, after school care for kids, like the Boys and Girls Club. We're really involved in that area because it really needed male support and positive influence in that area. And then when we were at Georgia State, we started, or at Duke, we did some clinics with local, inner city kids and kids less fortunate. And that's kind of when that kind of started. And then Georgia State, we did a few things like that as well. We did a clinic on MLK Day to provide a free clinic for kids. And so that's kind of, then I got a job at EKU. It's been kind of, now I'm running the show and I have a full range. I can kind of do things as I see fit. And we've just a variety of events to allow our kids to grow off the field, which I think is ultimately, and then it builds team chemistry. And we always see the benefit of it. There's nothing, bad about it, obviously.
Oh, for sure. And I'm just thinking too, you've talked about servants and serving others. So would you consider that like a standard of your program? Like it's something like a value that you've kind of defined and touch base and talk about a lot?
We were in the recruiting process. We identify kids and understand that, we're not for every kid. Right. And so we lay out everything. I'm such a straight shooter when it comes to what we look for, what we expect from them, throughout the process. Everything's going to be earned and everything's going to be in a general statement. But ultimately, we know, hey, if guys are already serving when they in high school or their travel team, their high school teams, that's going to be a good fit in that area, right? Then there's other areas that have to kind of cross the check the mark, so to speak. But that is something that it's heavily talked about. I'm not shy to talk about how I feel that we're going to serve others because that's how I am and that's how I'm raised. So yeah, definitely an important part. It is a staple. I think it's as important as anything to be able to have a program that can give back to the community and allow yourself to grow or have your kids grow. And I think the best example, I got a job reference, from one of my former players who the employee said, they asked him a question, what was the biggest what was the biggest time in college? What was the biggest moment, whatever it was? in college. And most kids would say, hey, we beat this school or beat that school with this win or that big hit. But his was being able to serve kids with Samaritan's feet and being able to provide a pair of shoes for a kid. And that following year, the same kid came back and it was the same pair of shoes. And that's when he realized that he had to do more when he got back into his community. And that's what he told his boss, and his boss had, in for 30 years, whatever he'd been interviewing people, he never had an answer from that from a 22-year-old kid. So like, that's kind of where I know, again, there's a mission that behind all the other things they have to do from an athletic standpoint. But if they're going to develop them, be good leaders in their community, be good men, fathers, and husbands, like that's ultimately my job. And that's what it's important to me.
Oh, wow. That is, and we'll talk about it. It's outstanding. What a lesson, like I said, here's the shoes I gave him, and he comes back the next year with those same shoes, I'm sure that was just an incredible impact, I'm sure, like, I'm not sure how you guys are with the Miracle League, like it's some people just have a really hard time, with that. And then other people, like, I can tell you, like, it just like opened their eyes to it. Like, do you have any other like kind of memorable stories like that, like kind of things like that, maybe have really touched kids and meant a certain something big to them?
Yeah, I think it's always just perspective. Anytime there's when we do a like Miracle League, we did it this fall. It's just perspective, and the next day when we're going over a bunt defense, I just tell them, hey, we didn't get it right, but we're fortunate to have the bunt defense. We're fortunate to do that at the level we are. We did a free clinic for kids in DC, the joy and the passion. They don't know about all the and other stuff that goes on at the higher level. They just play in the game. And so always take perspective from everything we always do to allow our kids to have that understanding, like, wow, we're pretty fortunate to be in the situation we are, to be at our school, but more or less to serve. And I think that's the biggest takeaway, whether, a team, so however that is, I think it's always been perspective. When the kids are done that day, whatever we do, they take perspective out of it. And for that moment that they have a time to reflect, like, it's not that bad. It's hard, it's difficult. There's challenges of being an athlete and student athlete and all those things. But at the end of the day, it could be a lot worse. And I think that's what I try to help instill into our kids. Like, you have to be able to just, do your part, do your job, but at the same time, be understanding and respectful of the situation you do have. Because it's never not like what we don't have in life. It's all what we do with what we do have. And that's what I always try to stress to our kids. And then during those moments, they always come out a little bit shiner because we realize, wow, it is pretty cool, pretty good, pretty fortunate. So
we are. So let me ask, because you mentioned about the fall. So you stay clear of, like, you don't do really not necessarily anything during the season, and most of the stuff is probably during the fall. And like you said, this wintertime before you guys get rolling.
Yeah, there's a couple events we'll do throughout the spring, depending on, we have some guys that don't travel. So part of their responsibility, throughout the spring is, if we're leaving on a Thursday, that Thursday night, they're going to be doing something for the team, for the organization. And so it's kind of a self-run. They may have a couple of things. They read to a school, and they just whatever that may be, something simple, but they're going to be involved. And that's part of the responsibility for the guys that don't travel. And that's being part of doing their part for the team and the organization. And so, but yes, the majority of it, we have very structured in the fall. We have more time. It's just like our practice day. So on a Saturday, it's scheduled. We don't have practice typically on certain Saturdays that we have, and we have them blocked off throughout the fall for community engagement.
Wow. Great. I love that. Just because as a coach, you kind of think through things, and even at the high school level in Maryland, we don't have the fall ball. So, like, as a team, like, we just really had to, you had to take off a day during the season, and you just kind of tried to be, you couldn't plan it as far as you like, because, you just never know where the season is. But so for us, feeling was like, hey, we could use today. We're like, need some perspective and just go do some stuff like that. So, and what I'm kind of thinking too, like, through all of these things, it seems like you're really trying to also bring the team together, and understand there's principles. Will you, besides this, the community stuff, will you do like a retreat? It seems like, will you do those kind of things to kind of also help, just not necessarily just the service side of it, but even just like a whole retreat where we're going to go and we're going to go to a place and just kind of get together?
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, I think they do so much stuff together on the field and baseball related. So anything non-baseball related, we try to bring our kids to. I mean, we're Obviously, we're so fortunate in DC with all the sports teams. So those are easy ones for us to go to a Nats game, or we're working on trying to get to a Capitals practice. Things that are different, but then also different sports. We're going to go, the Washington Spirit, the women's soccer team here in town. We're going to go talk to some people over there and just talk to other leaders and talk to other players at a high level that are achievers. But at the same time, we want to take them to downtown and explore our city. A lot of them, they get on campus and they kind of stay on campus. And so like any kids, they kind of stay in their bubble, no matter wherever camps I've been at. I've always taken them off the place. And I think, I always joke, one time we did it in Eastern Kentucky. We took them to a place called Disney, and it was a National Guard basically retreat. And they're like, "Oh, we're going to Disney." And I was like, "Yeah, we're going to go to Disney." But it was Disney, that was the base that was called. And it was just a different experience that took them out of their comfort zone. We've done a lot of different things over the time. I think every year, each team is different. You have to kind of know your team and allow them to kind of figure out like what's going to work. Sometimes some teams need the team building offsite type. Some teams just need just to get together and go. Like one day we had a practice. We didn't tell them anything. We had the only people that knew. They started a different route to go to practice. We took them to play mini golf, right? And that was like, they were so pumped about that. And we've been working really hard in the fall, and kind of just a reward of all the hard work. And I try to balance that out in the fall, where the fall can kind of get, over and over again to keep it fresh, to keep it fun. Something simple as that was like a big deal. So those things, like whatever that is for your team, but we've found that it's helped build our chemistry. We see guys compete in different areas. Everything we do, we always compete in it. So like we did bowling, we did mini golf, like those things are simple, fun things to do, but we put something on the line. And I think you can still get something out of every opportunity you have with your team, depending on what you want to get out of it. But you have to have some sort of framework. But then also this expectation, the standard that we're not going to stop just because we're playing mini golf. We're going to still compete. It may not be any good, but this is competition time, and there's a winner or loser. And as long as you understand that's kind of how we approach it. So there's a lot of different things like that we just kind of do, but it is very strategic, and each team, will be a different group that you have to kind of do that more or less depending on the time the group you have.
Okay. So yeah, and I like that, just kind of having a feel of like what your team does need. That is important. So you're kind of always evaluating and say like, hey, just the interesting thing of just not even telling them and coming out. It's just having a great feel for, okay, here's what we kind of need. That's great. Instead of like a scripted thing, like, oh, we're just going to do this again and this and that. Like, no, we're going to,
yeah.
That's awesome. Now, will you, as much as you compete, like, is it breaking it down like into certain teams during the fall, or are you trying to compete like in terms of you said there's stuff on the line, like you kind of put things like, let's say a practice, where like guys are winning, like, hey, winner does this, loser does this.
Yeah, every time, depending on the day, like from a batting practice standpoint, like we'll put our two shortstops that are competing for a job and for that day, and it could be something as simple as, hey, what music they want to listen to the next day for hitting. Something simple as that, but allows them to have some control over something that's important to them. But again, it can be something as simple as music, or it can be something like, to run down to the Capitol back, from campus, if we lost something on campus or whatever. So it just depends. Each situation is different, but we allow them, and we force them to have in that moment, daily we'll have some sort of competition in positional group, whether it be all the outfielders are going to throw from right field like a showcase, and who has the best throw is going to win, or who has the best pickoff move when we're doing like live stealing bases in the fall or whatever that may be. So, or even just live bullpens, we'll get the team together and we'll have both sides pick a player, and half the team has to pick, watch this pitcher and they play out. Basically, you got a pitcher of fastball out. You got to match it and go back and forth. So whatever that is, it's just from a competitive standpoint. I mean, it can be something simple as 10 burpees, or 10 push-ups, but it's just the fact that you lost and the other team won. That's kind of how there's a result-oriented business, right? And so the more you train that, the more you have a chance to go up there and feel like your team can compete against no matter who you play, because it's just playing the game.
Yeah, it pays to win.
Yeah.
I just, and for one thing, I got just thinking about was like, out of all these programs, like the story of, came from the bottom and now we're here, like he came from the last place to first place. Is that, would that be kind of the common thread of like, hey, you have to understand how to win. You have to have the mindset of winning. Is that something that you've kind of grown over the years? Like, look, that's why you've kind of where you kind of went into the program. They didn't understand it. They didn't feel it. And then you had to that's how you kind of build it.
Yeah, I think it's everything. I mean, I think every job I've taken over, there's things about the team that needed to get fixed, obviously, because they hadn't been winning. And so I say fixed, but they had the pieces, they had the right people, but just there are certain things. And I always use the analogy, and it's like my first year at Georgetown, we had a tough situation. We came in, got hired in September during COVID, didn't meet my team until March of 2021. March 27th of 2021. And we got thrown into the fire. Like literally it was like 6 days of practice. You got to go play VCU and UConn the first week. Like it was like 2 regional teams. It was like, okay, we hadn't even barely know their guys' names, but we never stopped our standard. We never expected anything less than what we wanted to ultimately have in our program. And we went to leave in Xavier, and I'll never forget it because I think they turned our program around. We were leaving, and I happened to be the last person to grab my uniform off the hangers in the little room we had before we got out to the bus. But all the hangers were down on the ground. Like a lot of them were just messed. Like people just grabbed their stuff and it dropped on the ground. Grabbed their stuff, dropped on the ground. But nobody picked it up. And one thing we talk about in our program is always be a professional, be a pro, right? No matter what it is, be professional. Locker room got to be staying a certain standard. But everything, this is one of those things where just somebody else was going to pick up the hangers. So I didn't say anything. We got to the field. And for about 20 minutes, I talked about what we expect, what we do. And we had lost some games, and it wasn't about the games. It's like the reason we're losing games consistently at this moment, one, because we didn't have a lack of time to prepare. It was difficult. But there's details when we lost by 1 run or 2 run. Well, the difference is the details, right? And so I said, why didn't anybody pick this hangers up? What was the problem? No one had an answer. Well, so now those hangers never get on the ground. Right. And so that was a moment in 2021 that built our foundation for the future for our program, because there's a standard now that we have. And until you do something like that, until you address it, it just hangers on the ground. And that sounds so simple, but it's also one that allows you to, as a coach, to grow your team in that moment and not yell at them, not, scream, and just say, hey, listen, let me ask you the question. Why did you do that? And then when they look at themselves, I said, are you capable of picking up a hanger? And they're like, yeah. I said, okay, of course you are. Right? Because in life, either A, you don't know how to do something, or B, you just don't feel like it. Right? And I said, you know how to pick up a hanger? They're like, yeah, coach, of course. So we just don't feel like it. Right? And I said, if you don't feel like doing the little things in life, then you don't feel like winning. That's it. That's a fact. If you don't pay your mortgage on time, if you don't show up on job in time, those things are going to matter. So like for me, I always try to blend the two of life and baseball and maximize that opportunity to teach. I'm a teacher at the end of the day. So that was one of those moments we taught, and it helped, kind of get to the program to a competitive standpoint on every aspect, not just baseball.
It's about the little details. There's difference in the details, and just again, like almost hot, like you said, holding yourself to a higher standard.
Sure.
But yeah, so and if you found that, East Kentucky, and you talk about all the different places that you've been, same kind of story of coming in there and the different expectations that you had, where being able to take a team that's from last to first.
Yeah. Every time in Kentucky, EKU, we had a guy that was wearing University of Kentucky shorts, like during practice he came out there, or early work one day, like just on his own. And I was like, hey, who are you? I didn't know who he was at the time. And it's like, do you play here? Are you a pro? Are you a visiting guy? I had no idea who he was. I just met my team. And he's like, no, I play here. I'm a third baseman or whatever. I said, how are you a third baseman wearing another team's shorts? And it's like, they're 20 minutes up the road. Everything around our area is all, at the time it was Kentucky. So it's like we play them. We expect to beat them. Like, the mindset at the program was like, nah, we're not beating Kentucky. Like, there's no way. It's like, we're going to beat them. And we did that year. And he's like, hey, coach, I really didn't believe that we could do it. And until you do something like that, you just never have that belief. But everywhere I've been, it's always kind of been, no matter what the situation is, you have to be able to believe it. You have to be able to have a visual, but also have to work at it daily to get to where you want to be. And it takes time. A lot of times, it takes just effort from the players, but also the staff and support staff to make sure that their standards are held up to the level that it needs to be successful, which is just, those are the things that I think are instilled everywhere I've been. And I've been fortunate to have guys that have bought into that in a short period of time, and then also have a great staff to help teach that. So that's always a combination, right? You can't just have it one way. You got to have it, the guys kind of buying collectively. And, I've been fortunate to have guys that have done that.
You said build the visual. Is that just like you just creating, like you said, we're going to beat Kentucky? Like, is that what you mean as like building and having a visual?
Yeah, I think it's just showing them what it's going to look like, and maybe through examples, maybe it's
okay,
different opportunities, but it's just showing them whether it be through video or just through print or through articles, constantly providing our kids with examples, right? Because the kids are so visual now. It's like you can talk and coach talk, but like, okay, hey, Kobe Bryant just said talk about habits. And they can grasp who Kobe Bryant is. They can grasp the same thing I'm saying to them. They can see it in a 1 minute clip or 30-second clip about a certain habits, how you want to be excellent in everything you do. I say it all the time, but now they see it and it's like, okay, that makes sense. Kobe just said it, right? And so every team's different, right? So you have to connect with them, in a way but those things are important too, because you have to be able to allow them to have that understanding that there's a process to it. There's an end result to it, but the process of how you get there is different for everybody. There's different ways to go about it, but here's how we're going to do it, because I think this is how it's going to work for us. And I think that's the part that listening to your kids, getting feedback from your kids is a big part of it. What I felt is allowing them to have some feedback and some interaction of like the process of where they all want to get to. And then at the same time, be realistic how we're going to get there and when we're going to get there. Right. And so like for us, I don't really talk about going to Omaha. I talk about winning a game. Win a road game, win a home game, and win a series, win a road series, and you stack those days up, and you just focus on each game and just focus on the most important game, which is your next, because it is, and everything else will, as you keep building a program, that's kind of how that goes. For me, that's kind of how we've had some consistency in our programs, each year.
So when you say going back to like the listening part is how you listening to the kids. Because I'm assuming that you come in, when you come into Georgetown after leaving EKU, is you had a vision for what it could be.
Mm-hmm.
And so you start with the vision, and then as it gets rolling, then as you're communicating with kids, and then they help you also with kind of where the vision can go.
Now you get feedback. You understand, hey, what are we doing? How's it going? How's everything? And you listen to them. You say, okay, they can sense. Like with our school, our kids are doing so much academically a lot. So like some days it might just be like, hey, we got a big week of school, coach. We got to, may have to pull it back a little bit. So we still got to work in. We're still efficient, but that might be something, a small, like 30 minutes less of a day so they can get back to campus to get their work in is a big deal. Or just maybe days where we need to just going to take off today. It's just, we're in a good spot in the fall, for example, and we just want to take a day off and we just want to, but just listening to them, what we need more of, what we need less of. Just hearing, those things. And obviously it's not like, hey, I want, they know with me, we're not, hey, I want X, Y, Z, we don't ask like those things. It's just more like communication about just, a similar thing like food, like what food we want to go to, it's just those little things that go a long way when you're talking to 18 to 20-year-old kids, but any kids, I think they just want to be part of the process. And I think they know that we're the coach. They know that we're going to make the final decisions, but to have their input and something simple is sometimes can go a long way, and it allows them to have that ability to trust you, to feel like they're part of it. It's not like a dictatorship; it's a partnership. And it's a shared partnership. I want shared accountability. I want openness, but ultimately it's their program, and so it's their experience. I'm not playing, but if some guys want to wear their pants up, some guys want to wear their pants down. Great, whatever makes you happy, right? And so like those little things. Or something simple as that for me, I've adapted in that process where I don't have to have it one way or the other. Those are like simple examples, but like that's something that I think just listening to what they're saying,
How do you get to that point? And I guess twofold, because how do you get to that point, kind of building that trust to be able to listen to them, and then two is like, or is it only like, let's say a leadership council or like your seniors like that you're really listening to?
Yeah, so I try to. I don't have captains. I've kind of gone away from that. In 2016, we had some captains at EKU, and I kind of reassessed what we were doing. Actually, in 2017, the fall of 17, and we just had accountability leaders. And so what we do is we just split the guys up with guys we think are leaders, guys that we think we can trust, and they hold each other accountable. So they have a group of people they're in charge of in the fall, and it allows them to grow as leaders. It allows to run a small group, to be in charge, make sure that they're on time for stuff, meetings, study hall. Everyone has a scale. They're important to have that. And I think every team, you can kind of look at you have probably 7 or 8 leaders. Sometimes you have tough decisions. You have to make as 2 captains or 3 captains. I just decided to let's take more ownership. I also try to have a different person in the organization be in charge of the group. Could be the same person, but sometimes like a freshman class doesn't have a chance to have a voice, but they can kind of be in that grouping. Sometimes I can have a freshman that can lead other freshmen, right? And so it just depends on the situation. But so I think hearing it from them, right? And I go to them and say, hey, what do you guys think? And that's kind of there's a communication where they're going to always, players are going to tell you coach talk, but the players that you kind of select, you have a relationship that you can trust them, you teach them what you expect, what you want. And it's not a matter like, hey, I don't want to know all the ins and outs, what goes on in the locker room. But if there's things that are going on that we need to fix, we need to talk to me. Right. And those are things that that's a really powerful thing when you get a group that says, yeah, coach, we got an issue. We got to talk about it. And then, stuff that kind of comes to my desk, hopefully is filtered. And so I can be more efficient with my decisions. And then they can kind of handle things that are the small stuff, like if a guy has his towels, not banging up his towel, just, you guys need to be able to address that. And that's when you have a good group is, they take the punishment out of it away from me, and they're doing it because it's important to them. And I think that's when you get a group to buy into that concept, that's when you kind of have some, a team that you can kind of, whatever the results are, you can live with because, you did everything possible. It wasn't like because we cheated our system or cheated ourselves. It was like, hey, we're doing it all this way. And if we win, we win. If we lose, we lose. But we don't lose to ourselves, and that's kind of been always a big part. Don't lose to Georgetown or EKU, wherever I've been at.
You seem to just really embodied that, and so, but now it's like, so how do you take the next step? It was the first winning program. You did set all these records, and then so how are you preparing now to which just the consistency is even harder. How are you helping, I guess, breed that consistency?
Yeah, the unknown is the unknown, right? When you have it first, when you see this in 1986. Coming to this fall, it's our biggest, okay, how are the guys going to come back? It's natural. People, how good you are. We just come back to, we got to get better. Right. And ultimately we didn't win a game in our Big East tournament. We lost 2 games, and the program has never won a game in the Big East tournament. So there's steps for us. Just got to win a game. Got to win another one. Got to get to Sunday. Right. So there's steps to get to where we want to be. And I think training that, talking about that, but not talking about anything heroic, what we're capable of doing. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. And then ultimately, just don't lose to us. And that's kind of been the focus is just, the Hoyas versus Hoyas. That's all we're focused on this fall, was just like our team, our situation. And you build that consistency through just the communication, how you present it to the kids. And I think that's been our biggest worry, but also so far it's been our biggest comfort, to knowing that we have a group that says, okay, what's we have to do today, coach? Let's get better. Let's execute. Let's improve. I always, at each practice, I always say that we win or lose that day. If we win more than we not, we're going to be okay. It's not going to win every game, not going to win at every practice. But if we win more practices over time in the fall, same thing in the spring. You want to carry that over, that same mindset. They're just going to win the day. And it sounds simple, and it is simple, but it's hard to do. You have to work at it as a staff. You have to work at it with your positional groups. You have to work at it within the group. But those are moments that you can kind of look back on and say, okay, hey, that was a big moment for us, and we kind of overcame that. So it's been kind of a fun to have that process, but it's definitely one that we work at for sure.
Yeah, something you got to build into every day, like you said.
Yeah.
I just it's just now being able to stay on there and just kind of go where it's definitely but I just love how you just you just have a great perspective of things. And I love how you even just said we're just going to talk about what we're capable of doing. That is so, I've never heard it that way. And that's we're capable of doing X, Y, and Z, and just not being able to lose to ourselves. I remember I got some Slosh, I think, is part of the, I remember seeing his itinerary, and he would say, play the game like we're gonna play the. He would say it's us versus us. Like it was something on the scorecard. Like as far as that. And I guess that's what you're saying. Like try not to beat us, like beat ourselves.
Yeah.
Man, that's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
Really great stuff, Coach. I guess, man, like going into, I was thinking just your staff, man. Like, how have you been able to find guys, where they have bought into this vision and saying, hey, here's where this is at, and I'm bringing you in here. We're going to help push this. Is it still just the vision of it? Like, how do you know what guys like, that one are gonna want to serve their community, hold it to a very high standard, and then be the really good teacher, like you said.
Yeah, I think goes back to who you identify. When I go talk to a family, I'm just honest. I when I was younger, you kind of, hey, we got this nice grandstand, or we have this, and you try to talk about the stuff. I don't recruit anymore. I try to present who we are, what we are, how we're going to do it, and the process of that to my staff, to players, to families. And I think that's allowed me to really get the right people. I've been very fortunate to have some really good staff, and I have a lot of them around the country coaching at different places or in professional baseball. And so it's a byproduct of hiring good people, but it's also people that hired me, looked at my resume, was never like, oh, wow, this guy played in this Omaha or did this. Like I was a Division III guy, went to Duke. Well, that guy took a chance on me, gave me an opportunity. And so when I identify the people that I want to bring in, I have to look at who's similar to me. And whether it be the Division III coach like I was for 6 years, maybe I get a coach from a smaller school that has kind of been working his way up to get that opportunity, right? Or maybe it's just somebody that never gets a chance because they haven't had a recruiting experience, provide that experience for them and teach them and grow them. And so I think just like I will my players and families, I'll talk about everything we want to do. And I talk about how the process is going to get there. And it's going to take time. It's going to take work, and it's going to take communication. It's going to take discipline. And so the ability that we have in that process of the interview, I think I do a good process in the interview process. But at the same time, it's one that you just identify certain traits as people go through it. And they're talking about, this, that. And it's like, even my graduate assistants, I got to hire them throughout the year, every year. What do they list? What are their goals? And if it's something that doesn't align with the program's goals, it just may not work out. Or if they're worried about other things other than serving or not giving and not understanding that there's challenges and there's, I always say that there's a different experience you're going to have. And those are just things that we kind of stress in that process. So it's just kind of more through the process of working and communicating through the journey of the interview process. But also, I think I've gotten to a point where people identify that outside that maybe look in, that are like, wow, like I came from Division III. Maybe I should be, that might be a good fit. And I'm not saying I would never take a guy from a Power 5. I just haven't. Hasn't happened for whatever reason. I've gotten really good people that have had a different background that allowed me to then once they get here, we kind of, I kept my staff last year, which was fortunate. It's always hard to do, and the continuity and like what UVA did for such a long time, or those programs that had those long tenured coaches. And, it's hard in this business where opportunities will come up and just how do you keep them here? So those are all things that year to year, I just try to evaluate and help grow our coaches too. I think a lot of it, sometimes I talk about our player development. What about our coach development? And part of what I try to do is grow our coaches, and we have a plan. Here's our goals. Here's our expectations. So throughout the year, they're getting one-on-one with me to kind of make sure that they're getting where they want to be in baseball and in life. And so it's kind of a full cycle of process for them too.
I'd love to dive more into that. Like, cause I was thinking just how, like, it is probably such a challenge, like to keep your staff and like how you're doing, like how much control do you even have of that? Or like things that you're capable of in order to keep the staff.
Yeah. I mean, some things, you can't control, right? If certain schools call or certain opportunities come up. And, I think in 2018, we won games. Both my coaches left, or all my coaches. Yeah. Both my full-time coaches got better jobs. Great. I'm supporting that. I want that. That's an important part of my journey, is to help guys move on. And I think that's been kind of for a while, my volunteer at Eastern Kentucky had one that was moved up to recruiting coordinator for like 3 years in a row, right? Or we had a few that moved on to professional baseball. And so it just depends on each guy is different. Each person's journey is different where they're at. And but I think you just get fortunate to get the right people. You take care of them the best you can. And then they want to be around it, you know, and I think that's something, but like anything, always good things come to an end. It's not, you know, very rarely where you can keep them for a long period of time. Like my coach McDougall been with me since 2000, the fall of 17. And so that's the longest tenured coach I've been a part of, but it's been great. And, you know, my coach Cape and with me now for 3 years, and Coach Keener, like our assistant, like we're all in our second year together. So our whole staff been together for second years. We had some, you know, graduate guys leave, got a full-time job here or there, but like our staff has been there. So that part's because they want to be part of the journey, right? And I think that like any competitor, you want to, kind of work all the work you put in to get it. And I think that's in this business, if you leave, you miss that, all the work you put in, you know? And I think that's, and then as an assistant, it's a hard balance to play because opportunities will come up, but just how do you balance that out with where you're at right now? And I've always been a big believer in be where your dream job is at where you're at. You know, whatever that was when I was at University of Maine at Farmington, making no money and just doing it because I loved it. I thought I was at the school I wanted to be at. I thought I wanted to be, you know, like that. And that's how I approach my work. And I think that's kind of what I try to instill to our staff is just approach it like that, be very professional. And then ultimately you'll get to where you want to be when the time is right.
Be where your dream job is, wherever you are. Yes. So, and I love the one-on-one, like you sitting with your coaches as well. You know, like I think we don't maybe not spend. Is that mostly is that like a monthly thing, or is that something maybe just as needed, or is it just kind of like the end of the year kind of review?
Yeah, no. So I've been very intentional, starting, you know, last fall and trying to really get into more one-on-one with the guys outside of, hey, let's talk recruiting. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about you. How are you doing? What are you up to? How's this going along? What can I help you with? What are your next steps? What do you want to do? Like those are conversations that are important to have. And then just, you know, professional development, you know, like obviously a lot of us went out to ABCA, which is a phenomenal event, or other events that go on to learn, to grow, to network. And I force our guys to reach out to other people in the industry to learn, to talk, to experience a different voice than mine. Because I think and I want to hear information from other, you know, I sent our strength coach out to talk to some former strength coaches of mine that I really respect in the business, you know, so it's not just our baseball staff, it's our operations, you know, people that we hire, our equipment manager, you know, everything to how to be more efficient, you know, how to be more to help our kids. Ultimately, it comes back to our kids. And if all of our coaches are getting good information and learning as well, I can help them in that journey. But yeah, it's something that we try to, at least in the season, try to do once a month, where I'll sit down and at the breakfast at a hotel and just kind of have a one-on-one about where they're at, what they're up to mentally, physically, emotionally, and just make sure they're centered. Because if you're staff centered, you know, you're centered. But those are kind of things that we just kind of work on and have objectives, have goals and objectives like we do with the players. But if we don't do it with the staff, then, you know, how are they going to chance to get any better? How are they going to get ready for that next opportunity? So those are just things we try to work on and just have a simple method that we try to attack.
Well, so, and then I'm just want to hear Coach too, because even from us, from a head coaching standpoint, or how do you do that for yourself? Because I'm sure you seem like you serve and you put those others first, but I'm sure that you want to lead by example. So is that the same kind of model that you do for yourself?
Yeah, it is, and I think it's people in your life you kind of go to that kind of mentor me, if you will, and talk to me outside. And I've been one to kind of go outside the box. I have a lot of people in this business that are good friends that I reach out to in the business, but I also reach out to other sports, people that have been very successful in other sports or in business and that kind of run an organization or be a leader in different ways. And I'm always willing to learn. I think that's where the growth mindset, the ability to learn and look at yourself. And I think there's always, I picked this up from a few years back from MLB team that they have a thing called 1 up and 1 down, where at the end of the year, you have your players or staff give you a 1 up and 1 down, like one thing they really like, one thing that like, coach, we got to get you better at. And again, 2017, that team, we were last place team at EKU, and we had some good players. We just didn't have that enough to be consistent to win like we needed to. We finished last in the conference, and I was kind of really evaluating myself, right? I was like, man, what are we doing wrong? Like we beat some teams, but we were developing players. We just weren't putting it together. And a lot of it came back from that year. Those seniors told me the truth. And that was really what I was telling them, tell me the truth. And it's hard as a coach to hear that you're not doing a good job, or hard not you're doing in this area or that area. They may love this, but and that was one of those moments where like, okay, I got to make sure I'm telling my staff to go do some development. I got to make sure I'm talking to other people, and I got to make sure I'm holding it true to my message. So that's a moment in time where 2017 was like, for me, was a big year, or 2018 that year. And that year, that team wasn't good. We started off really slow. We stopped. We had a moment. I never forget. We lost like 14-1 on a weekend, and like we got swept on a weekend. After we had beaten like some really good teams, I said, okay, who are we going to be? We kind of really brought down to the basics of who we wanted to be that moment. And for that moment in time, from a coaching standpoint, I was worrying about too many other things. I said, I got it really simple, really basic, and here's how we're going to approach it. And so that's kind of like, there's moments as a coach, and this is 19th year for me coaching. So I've been fortunate to kind of have a wide range of experience at different levels. But, for me, I enjoy talking to the CEO of a company, or I enjoy talking to a person in a different gender sport, women's sport. Like I enjoy, how do you lead differently? And so you pick up stuff like that.
So will you take the time, like, that's something I always enjoyed. Like, so at Georgetown, will you go and watch a practice, like let's say women's volleyball or the basketball team, or, that's something that you regularly do?
Really fortunate. I kind of, I've done everywhere I've been, but it really, whether you at Duke, that was kind of like a window where I was with Coach K, and then Coach P, who's the women's coach, who's from Maine, who's one of my mentors. It's like, I was fortunate to like be involved in like behind the scenes and see like why they're so good, why they win national champ. Like I was able to see it and talk to the people at a very high level. And so our soccer team at the time at Duke was really good, still really good in lacrosse. And so everywhere I've gone, I've kind of picked programs that I think are doing well at the school, because every school is different. So you recruit differently to every school. What's working at this school versus that, so like that's been something, when I got here at Georgetown, like our soccer program won a national championship in 2019. So I got hired in 2020. I was like, okay, who's my first phone call? It was a soccer coach. What did you do? How'd you do it? And so you don't try to reinvent the wheel, but you try to gather information that's worked at that school. I think that's something that's important, whether you're at high school, you're going in, and who's like your new coach coming in, like you better find out who the best team in that school, because they have it kind of figured out and what works. And so those are something I've always done, but now more so as I kind of got into this in this new position.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. And like I said, how do you take, and maybe you can kind of shed some light, because like, let's say you talk to the soccer coach, hey, here's what works here, and then still make it your own and being true to Coach Thompson.
Yeah, I think you got to know your team. I mean, you got to know yourself, right? I think it's like anything. So like we all went to ABCA, a lot of us, you can take a drill and you can put it into your program, but is it going to be yours? Well, no, it's going to be somebody else's. That's like how it works, right? But what spin can you put on it? How can you communicate it to your kids? I think that is yours. And so all the information of how they did something, it may not be the exact path, but there's a model of a basic premise, like it has to do certain things here from an academic standpoint, or from recruiting standpoint, or any mistakes made over the way. I think that's kind of what I look at. It's like, what mistakes did you make? I know that. What mistakes did you make your first couple of years here, and try to fix those mistakes before you do them, and then you're able to kind of be in a better spot. So yeah, you have to make it your own. I think anytime you try to do somebody that you're not, I'm not Coach K, but the standards that he had for his players, I can do that. I may not be able to communicate like the way he did, because I don't have national championships or gold medals or those type of things, but the standards are the standards, or how we communicate to each other. That's something that we can really do. So those are just things you have to kind of adapt to where you're at and ultimately who you are. And even if I had a multiple national championship, I still think you still got to be yourself. And the kids recognize that if you're somebody you're not, you're trying to be phony. And I think, again, like young coaches, when you're younger, you try to be something you're not. When I was a pitching coach, I try to be something I wasn't at times. And so it just kind of depends on each situation.
Yeah, I love that. And I even like the question of like, what mistakes did you make early on? I know, kind of like, I love the question of like, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
Yeah. Well, I think this would be from a recruiting standpoint, just not being, I was always honest, but I would hide away from the reality, right? Like in Coach K, one thing, again, I was very fortunate. Again, not a relationship in the sense I can call him every day, but like when I was there, we were colleagues. And so he's like, just be honest and genuine with them. Tell them the truth, even if that's not what they want to hear. Tell them what they need to hear. And that's always kind of stuck with me. When you're younger, you're like, again, we got this grandstand, we got this, but like the field was not great. And so you kind of just stay out. Like, it's kind of like that. Have you ever seen the movie 8 Mile? And Eminem was talking about, he got in a rap battle about, they're making fun of him for all the things he didn't have. And he just turned it right back around and said, here's all the things I don't have. And here I make a rap song about it, and that's kind of like, when I was at Georgia State, it was kind of one of the moments, there's 2 paths you could take to go to a dorm. You can go to the admissions dorm, which was nice and had flowers and had all these stuff. But then there was like the reality that where most people go, because it's closer, it's quicker, and it was right through the homeless people. People that, asking for money every day. And so I would take the kids to nice admissions whether they want us to do, but then kids were like, man, I don't like it here. I don't really like the downtown. I was like, what do you mean? It's nice. They're like, no, I walk this way. And so I started taking those guys that way and say, hey, every day, these people are going to be here. Just know that if you don't like that, don't come here. And I know it's very hardcore, but it's just the reality. Every school is different. Every situation. If you don't want to come to school academically at Georgetown, it's not going to work. So don't try to come here thinking you're just going to be whatever. That's not going to work. You have to put in the time and effort. So just been honest and direct. I think that's part of the biggest thing over time. You just be honest and direct, tell them like it is. And then I think that really allows them to know where you're at, know what your expectations are. And there's no like misunderstanding.
For sure. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's be honest and direct for sure. It just seems like you're very direct, very intentional, about things. And how is that intentional? Like in terms of like, let's kind of get into like specifics of baseball. Like, how are you intentional, let's say with the kids, like evaluation or kind of where they need to be in terms of their performance?
We posted a depth chart. Football does it.
Yep.
All the time. First string, second string, third string. Every week we post a depth chart in the fall where you're at. So they don't have any questions. They know where they're at. And here's how you want to get better. Come talk to us. If you have a problem with where you're at, come talk to us. It's no problem. It's about performance. It's a results-oriented business. If I always tell the analogy, I said, fellas, if you guys go to Chick-fil-A and you happen to have your uniform on and you're dirty, people are going to probably ask you 1 or 2 questions. They're going to say, did you win? And how'd you do? It's a fair question, right? If you think about that, all the times you've been in a baseball uniform, you go to Chick-fil-A, they say, did you win? They don't say, who'd you play? They don't say you just faced the #1 draft pick, or they don't say they say, did you win? And so it's a results-oriented business. So in the business of, if you get graded in school, we're going to grade you in the baseball field, right? And here's where you're at. You're getting A's, B's, or C's, or D's. Here's how it looks. And if you want to get better grades, here's how you do it. If you want to get better on the field, here's how you do it. And so that's how we do it. And we just constantly communicate to those kids. And if they come to us, I say, if you want to come talk to me, I'll tell you the truth. So most of the time when you post a depth chart, they know. They don't like it. They don't like seeing the name in third string. They don't like that. But it's reality. They know. But the ones that don't know or not, you just tell them the reality. Okay, here are your numbers. Boom. What else would you like to talk about? And here's how you fix it. Boom. And you give a plan. And, that creates competition. That creates uncomfortable conversations, if you will. But here's what we're talking about. You want a promotion in a job someday? Here's where you're at. This guy's ahead of you. This guy's ahead of you. It's what it is. So teaching them the reality of what's going to come down the road is really important, I think. And for me, it works. So not for everybody. Some people don't like the depth chart, and I'm not here to hurt feelings. But again, I tell them through the process of recruiting, this is how it is.
Teaching them the reality of the future.
Yeah.
So good. So I mean, like when you're creating a depth chart and as you're evaluating, how much is objective in terms of maybe certain things that you're looking for, and then of course we're all kind of subjective of what we see.
I think it's a combination. I think it's one. It's we use everyone in my staff. Is the equipment manager, is he having issues with this person? Is our strength coach, the guy not taking up here, not doing his lifts like he should? All those factors. Training rooms, is he going and getting out? Is he just hanging out? Right? Those habits that we talk about that we want to have, I think those are all, and there's a results part of it, right? I mean, it's, you can do all those things well and not perform. Well, it doesn't mean you're going to be on the depth chart because you're going to be high because you're, a great person. That's important. There's a value of that in our team, our organization, but that won't necessarily put you at first, because if you're not performing and getting guys out as a pitcher, I had a great terminology at the ABCA was a professional outgetter by Chuck, the pitching coach at Florida State. Like that was like phenomenal. I was like, that's awesome. I love it, And so, yeah, I think that those are all things that we just try to be realistic and ultimately tell them this is what it is. Here are the numbers,
What kind of numbers do you like? Let's say in terms of pitching, because I know you have a big background in pitching, is like, what do you like to see in terms of numbers from a pitcher?
Outs. I love outs. Outs are a friend. How you get them, it can be different. I mean, you can be a 80 to 81 mile drop down submarine that gets outs on the right hander, or you can be 92, 95 and get guys out with stuff. But who can pitch, who can compete? I was always told at a young age is you want athletic pitchers with arm speed that are competitive. That's starting point. And if you have those things, you can start. And then ultimately, you have strike throwers, and can you hold the runner? We had a bullpen the other day with a young freshman was one slow to the plate. And I said, hey man, listen, I appreciate what you're doing, throwing some strikes. That's awesome. When they get on base, they're going to be at second and third base very quickly. So you're going to have a tough time if you don't. It's like those are moments, right? But all those things matter. But I think just your presence, your poise, your ability to command, and people look at you and say, okay, he's got the ball, right? Because in our program, like most programs, the number one pitcher on our team is the guy with the ball, right? There's nobody that's more important than the guy with the ball. If you're in the sixth inning up 2, that guy's pretty important. And the next guy coming in to get the lefty out, he's pretty important, right? So that's something that we just try to value and to build into our kids. It's just like, just do your part, and but I think every pitcher is different. So if they're all they are is a matchup person, then you have to value that. If they're, and if they don't do it, they don't do it. But if they're, it just depends on each pitcher. But I think just generally speaking, yeah, everyone wants outs and everyone wants strikes, tempo. But I think the poise, I think that, man, it just, again, the bullpen, they go, he was all frustrated and everything like that. I said, no, man, listen, here's why. You didn't prepare like you should have, and they know deep down, they know. And that's why they have the outward emotion. But the key is getting that channel emotion and get it to the direction you want to be as a coach. And as a pitcher, you want to get them to be able to get what you want, throw strikes or whatever it is.
Now, Coach, being such a pitching guy, how do you balance, allowing the freedom of your pitching coach to work, and then it's so much that you have a pitching background? How are you able to, I guess, that relationship with you guys working together?
Yeah, just be honest. I hire guys to do their job, right? Yeah. And so Coach McDougall does our hitters. Well, I have a hitting background. Coach Capon is our pitching coach. Coach Brock is our assistant hitting coach and defensive coordinator. They got to do their job. I'm hiring them to do the job. Obviously, we're going to have conversation. Obviously, we're going to have input. I never want to be in a situation where I don't feel like anybody's voice isn't heard. And so I think if I see things, I tell them. If I see things one way or the other, offensively, defensively, pitching, I say, hey, I want to look at this. What about that? And we'll add things and we'll take things out. And I think any good organization has good communication, right? And that's the key to this. This whole thing is about communication. We all have a common goal. We all have an end result we want to be at. Well, we all have to make sure that all 40 of us plus the 10 staff or whatever we have, support staff, all align in the same vision and the same page. And so I think I don't micromanage. I've been much better. In 2017, I was doing a lot. I was doing too much, and that allowed me to step back and be better in other areas I have to improve on. And then it helped the organization. It's helped kind of in the process of where we wanted to be. So I think, those things of listening to your staff, but also listening to your play. I mean, listening to your players is important, but also listen to your staff, right? Because they're in it and they're the ones, doing like anything. So just being honest and open about what I see and what I think and move on.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, just wondering. Man, Coach, it was just love the specifics. I love there was just a great theme of communication, service, competing. Are these things, as much as they kind of come up, are these things that are defined in your program? Like, how much do you define that kind of those values and like your mission, or is it just something that, look, you guys are just living daily and this is kind of just where we are?
Yeah, I mean, we in our program, our locker room has earn your shirt and do your job, and I think from that we have a very simple mantra: is just be competitive, be a professional person, and enjoy and have a passion for what you're doing. And I think those things are the basics that you want to have, right? If you don't have passion for anything, it's like it'd be hard. It'd be hard to go to have fun and do the things you want to do if you don't have passion for it. If you're not passionate about, for me, teaching and impacting, I just find something else. But same thing in life. If you're not passionate about, your job or anything, like it's hard to get excited about it. Sometimes you have to do a job to do it. But we talk about it. We embrace it. We try to instill that into our players. The competition thing is different for a lot of them, and again, I come from a football family. I come from a football background and basketball background. I coached basketball for 6 years before I got into college baseball coaching. I coached college football. And I coached a lot of different sports. And so it's allowed me to have perspective of, why don't we do this? Why don't we do more one-on-one with the baseball? Doesn't make any sense. How we train our kids if we don't give them one-on-one opportunities. Basketball, you do all the time, one-on-one, right? All the time. But baseball, we don't do that. So we do it. We do it all the time. We'll put our 2 shortstops out there in the middle of practice, make a play. One play, one chance to win. If not, loser has 10 push-ups. Whatever it is. The whole team sees it. And then over time, the person that's better will be better. And then when I put a lineup up, the person knows between that, the depth chart and all that. And so the more that you can kind of create that in your program, for me, has been where we've kind of taken a step, right? Like the fall of 2017, everything it was because we were so bad. We weren't where we wanted to be. Well, you better compete. Brought in more players and, the competition component. But even if you have less players, doesn't matter. How do you get your best players to play hard when you know that player behind you isn't going to help you? No, make it uncomfortable. When we had Marcus Stroman at Duke, his strike zone was really small. We made it really small. We told the umpires in games, call it really small to make him be really good and be what he is, right? And so you have to kind of be creative because he knew no one behind him was going to take his spot in the rotation. But we're not worried about that. We were worried about how can he help us? How can he help him? You know what I mean? So you have to kind of create that environment for your kids, whatever that may look like, especially when you have players that are significantly better versus other ones that are not where they want to be. But your job as a coach is try to get them to maximize their talent. And that's, to me, it just goes back to competition. And that can be competing amongst themselves or competing, amongst others and their peers.
I just the creativity along with that, like you said, making this like a strike zone small with those guys that are trying to challenge them. And for me, that even goes back to like your poise comment about pitchers, like when you're like making the strike zone really small and you want to kind of see their poise in those kind of situations too, seeing how like how they tick, when they kind of like not being as successful, and you're trying to challenge them.
Yeah. Same thing offensively. We'll do the same thing offensively. We'll call a ball a strike, a ball, a ball strike. How are they going to react? It's going to happen.
Yeah.
We better train it. If you don't train or your kids to deal with umpires in the off season or whatever, they're going to have a hard time because they're going to be like, I don't know if you watch the World Cup, and I love soccer, but man, every 5 seconds they're like questioning the referee. And I was like, this is crazy. This is a different sport where they're high level, but they're like every call was like in their umpire's on the referee's face. It's like, well, I bet you they don't practice that. I mean, they're the best of the best. I'm not taking anything away from those countries, those teams, but like if we do that in baseball, we'll be guys be getting ejected left and right. And so you better train your guys to deal with the umpires making a call that maybe you thought wasn't right, but who cares at the end of the day, right? We always say you get 3 pitches, you're going to get one of them to hit. You missed it. That's on you. Don't wait till the last one. That's on you. And so that's how I am. Right? I go right back to them, say that. Don't get mad at him. Get mad at yourself or get yourself out.
That's right. You go back to where you just said, we're not going to beat ourselves. We're going
Right.
to be,
Yeah.
we're just not going to lose to ourselves. It's
Yeah.
awesome. So, I mean, Coach, I want to respect your time. It's been great. We've already been over an hour. We've kind of talked about these things that, maybe somebody doesn't know, or somebody, like, maybe something we haven't touched base with. Like, is there something that maybe something's on your heart that you feel like you wanted to share, something we haven't touched base with that you just kind of like to touch base and talk about?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is just enjoy what you do and love what you do, and be prepared. I think that's the thing that we try to pride ourselves, but just have fun with your kids. I think we all get caught up in winning, and winning's, listen, everyone wants to win. Like there's, it's kind of like no kidding. Everyone wants to win. You want to win? Yeah. If you raise your hands of every team in the country, everyone wants to win, right? That's a natural result. But who wants to lead and to grow and to teach? We all got in the business in my profession time 20 years ago to teach and to grow. That's what I love doing. And I think don't lose sight of that process of having fun during that journey, because I've had some of the best teams that we just didn't win. We just didn't, we weren't talented enough, or we didn't have the right, system or whatever it was. But the process of that team is always special, because every team's different. Every year's gonna be different, and I think that's sometimes we tell our kids, like, don't miss that window. Like, just enjoy this process, enjoy this team. And I think that's something that I think that how you get there, hey, totally different for everybody, right? But I think the for me, I've been fortunate to have great staff, great people that have bought in, that have made the journey kind of a really fun one. So, coming from Maine to be coaching as long as I have, I'm very fortunate and have great people and great, mentors and all that. But I think it's just comes down to, enjoying what you do, and the more you can do that, it makes it that much easier to go to work or to go to practice and get out there and grow people. And that's what's been pretty cool to have.
Coach Thompson, Georgetown University, just exemplifying, showing why he's been successful at every step of the road. Really can't thank him enough. Just to give us some dive in. Just loved even conversations had even afterwards. We stopped talking, and after we press record, just little things that come about, and really starting to see, and loved how he even goes about as a coach. We do have access to other great coaches in our buildings or in our schools, and for him to go look at other programs and how they're successful at their school in this little unique environment, what they're doing, and going off of that and bouncing off and building off of that and making it your own based off of that, that success, the recipe of success that's happening specifically for that unique group, because every school has a different set of challenges. So I really, really enjoyed that piece of it. Because Georgetown, just like Maine, has a lot of challenges, and they've continued to show that he's got a recipe, he's got a good system. And he talks about his systems. He's talking about routines. He's talking about setting standards. Talking about communication. All very good things that high-performing programs are doing. So again, just another great example of those, and how much he talked about communication, how much he talked about those standards, and how much he talked about competition. And I just really love this idea of 1v1 in baseball. How he, in order to just gauge more of that competition, and just, we have 1v1s in so many other sports, and put it out there for people to see. And I think it's just the time. I'm not exactly sure, but you're thinking about the time, and but it's just short little bursts. Here's 1v1, his get it period, like, get it done. Who's going to get it done? Who's going to win? Who's going to lose? And it's just a really cool experience, a great way to throw in some competition. I really enjoyed that, and just really getting to know, just how good his offensive teams have been with this kind of system they have. And he's putting them in uncomfortable situations and helping them feel comfortable being uncomfortable, and getting torn up in BP, and showing them a lot of failure, and really kind of, as Coach Gilmore said, dirty practice. It just doesn't look good, chaotic. But get comfortable in those chaotic and those ugly situations, and the game will translate, And so he's his system's working, and it's great to see, and it's good for baseball. It's good for us. He's elevating the game for sure. And Coach Thompson, can't thank you enough for the time. Can't thank you guys enough for continuing to support us, as well as our sponsors at Netting Pro. So until next time, keep getting better.